Dorothy was a wonderful young 13-year-old girl who was growing up with a psychotic single mother. She did well in school, she had many friends, and was part of the cheerleading team. She had a bright future until the unexpected happened.
This all started on November 11th, 1967. It was what seemed like a normal Saturday. Dorothy was at the park with her mother, Jessica. They were doing normal things such as playing tag, going down the slide, and having fun.
Everything seemed normal until Jessica, Dorothy's mom, saw a white pickup truck slowly drive by and park on the corner. But it just sat there. After a while, Jessica forgot about the truck. She was focused on Dorothy.
Suddenly, Jessica got a phone call. It was an important call, so she stepped away from the playground to avoid the noise of all the kids. She left Dorothy by herself. Jessica didn't believe anything would happen to her daughter.
After a few seconds, a mysterious man stepped out of the white truck. He was tall and muscular. His attire consisted of a hoodie and sweatpants. He began to walk towards the playground, eyeing Dorothy the whole time. The poor girl was oblivious to what was about to happen.
The man approached Dorothy from behind. She was sitting on the swing. Suddenly, he grabbed her. Dorothy let out a loud scream, so loud that the entire park could hear.
Taking quick action, her mom hung up the phone and began running towards the scream. By the time she got to the playground where Dorothy was, the man had already begun driving away. The scream could still be heard from the truck. Jessica immediately knew what had happened.
Jessica began running after the truck, determined to get her child back. It was no use, though, as her legs couldn't compare to the speed of the vehicle. After realizing catching up would be impossible, she picked up her phone and dialed 911.
An officer picked up. Jessica quickly explained the situation. She asked for immediate assistance to get her child back. The officer, whose name was Dave, quickly began to work to find the missing girl.
Right after the call, Jessica dropped to the floor and began to cry. After a few minutes, she decided to head home. She got into her car. Through her tears, she drove home. She felt her heart pounding, wishing she could have done more to save her daughter. When she got home, she immediately went to bed.
While all this was happening, something else was happening in the truck. Dorothy sat in the backseat of the truck, scared for her life. She had no idea what was going on, or who this mysterious man was, or where she was going.
Dorothy asked the man, "Who are you? Where are you taking me?" He didn't answer, only glanced back at her. She asked again, "Who are you? Where are you taking me?" He didn't answer. Dorothy knew she had to do something. She tried to open the door, but it was locked. She looked at the scary man, defeated.
After a couple more minutes on the road, the man finally said, "It's okay, Dorothy. I'm not going to hurt you." Dorothy turned her head to face him. "How do you know my name?" The man didn't answer. After a while, they finally pulled to a house.
The house was an older house. It was out in the far country. It was very small, and instead of a garage, it had a carport, just big enough for the white truck. Once the vehicle had parked, the man turned to Dorothy. "Listen, kid, do as I say. It'll make this easier for both of us." Dorothy, still trembling with fear, nodded her head.
After saying this, the man instructed Dorothy to step out of the vehicle. She couldn't have run away at this moment. The man's physical strength was much greater than her own. After she got out of the truck, he dragged her by her arm into the house.
Once they were inside, the man locked the door and pulled Dorothy into what it seemed to be a dining room. He made sure she sat down before taking his seat. The man just stared at Dorothy. Strangely, his eyes looked sad.
Dorothy looked away from him. "What do you want from me?" she asked. The man let out a sigh. "My name is Javier. I am your father." Dorothy turned to him. "How dare you? My father has been dead for years. How do you expect me to believe this lie?"
Dorothy stood up from the table and bolted to the door. Javier immediately stood up and went after her. Despite Dorothy's efforts to escape, the man quickly caught up to her and dragged her back to her seat. He sat next to her.
The man opened his mouth to speak. "Dorothy, I'm just trying to keep you safe." Dorothy stood up from the table and bolted to the door once again. The man chased after her once more. She didn't get very far this time.
Javier grabbed Dorothy by the arm again. "You gotta stop, kid. It's no use. I'm trying to save you from her. Listen to your father," he said. He once again dragged her back to the table. He sat next to her again. This time he held her onto her wrist.
Dorothy stared at him, horror in her eyes. "You're not my father. Leave me alone, you creep. I want my mother back. Bring me home." She began screaming and kicking. The man stood up and went to the kitchen, leaving her alone.
The frightened and overwhelmed Dorothy didn't dare try to escape. She continued her screaming. A few minutes later, the man came back to the dining room table with a spoon and bowl of strawberry ice cream. He sat both the utensil and the bowl down in front of her.
Dorothy looked up at him, obviously confused. Javier nodded at her. With trembling hands, she picked up the spoon and began eating the ice cream. To her surprise, it was delicious. She looked up at the man. He looked back at her. "I am your father, Dorothy. You must believe me. I've always been searching for you. You must stay here. That mad woman will destroy your life."
Dorothy was confused. "What woman?" she asked. "Your mother," said Javier. Dorothy didn't know whether to trust this man or not. He had kidnapped her, so she thought you should hate him, but something about him seemed familiar, almost comforting. On the other hand, he has taken her away from her mother, whom she loved dearly. How could Dorothy trust her kidnapper?
Dorothy suddenly felt a wave of sleepiness rush over her. She reluctantly decided to tell the man. He grabbed her wrist to ensure that she wouldn't run away again. He led her to a door that was the basement entrance. Down the basement stairs was a bedroom with pink walls and tons of stuffed animals. A comfortable bed was also in the room, as well as a closet full of clothes.
Dorothy looked at him, very confused. Why was the man who had kidnapped her treating her so well? It seemed odd to her. "See, Dorothy, I am your father," said Javier. "I've been waiting for you." Dorothy felt a little weirded out by this comment, but she was too tired to think.
The man let go of her wrist, and Dorothy immediately went to lie down on the bed. It was very comfy. She quickly fell asleep. Javier turned off the basement light and went back up the stairs, shutting the door behind him.
Dorothy slept peacefully for a bit, before suddenly waking up around 4:32 a.m. She woke up in a dark room. She remembered being kidnapped. She remembered trusting her kidnapper. She remembered the basement bedroom. She prayed it was all a dream.
Dorothy walked towards the wall so she could feel for a light switch. Maybe she was home in her bedroom. Maybe her mom was in the kitchen on the morning phone call. Maybe it was really a dream. When she finally found a switch, she paused for a moment.
Dorothy took a few deep breaths before reaching for the switch. She finally turned on the lights. Before her were the same pink walls from the following night, the same comfy bed, the same stuffed animals, the same clothes. She was disappointed to learn that it wasn't a dream. Her situation was less than ideal. Strangely, though, she wasn't very scared.
Dorothy decided to go upstairs. Once she got up the stairs, a delicious smell polluted the air. She suddenly felt very hungry and decided to go to the kitchen. Inside the kitchen was Javier. He was cooking breakfast. "Good morning, Dorothy," said Javier. Good morning, Javier," said Dorothy.
Javier opened his mouth to speak. "Eat all you want, kid." Dorothy nodded and began eating. Like the ice cream, it was delicious. She was very confused. Why would this man kidnap her if he was going to treat her so well? He hadn't hurt her, he hadn't starved her, and he certainly hadn't made her living conditions any worse.
Dorothy hated to admit it, but she was starting to trust this man. She still didn't believe that this was her father, but she also didn't think that his intentions were to hurt her. She didn't know why he kidnapped her, but he's been treating her so well there that she had to be there for a good reason. She was extremely confused.
Later in the day, Dorothy noticed that she hadn't seen Javier in a while. She decided to walk around a bit. She was very bored, so she went into the kitchen and began opening drawers.
One drawer had silverware, one had cooking utensils, and one had a ton of miscellaneous items. Dorothy began to dig around in the drawer of miscellaneous items. She didn't find much at first, but eventually something caught her eye.
The item was buried. Dorothy dug it up and took it out the drawer. It was a photograph. The photograph was a picture of a young girl on her birthday. There was a cake in front of her and her parents beside her.
Behind the parents and the girl stood two boys and one girl. All three of them looked to be about the same age, and they all looked very similar. Dorothy turned her attention towards her parents in the photo.
She looked at the father. He looked eerily similar to Javier. She looked at the mother. She looked similar to her own mother. Dorothy's heart began pounding. "It's probably just a coincidence," she whispered to herself. "Has to be, right?"
Dorothy looked at the girl in the photograph. She dropped the image on the concrete floor. She stood there in shock. The girl in the photo was Dorothy when she was 2 years old. The mother in the photo was Dorothy's mother, and the father in the photo was Javier.
Javier walked into the kitchen. When he saw Dorothy standing in shock, he immediately started walking towards her. It wasn't long before he discovered the photo. "Oh, you found it," said Javier. "I told you I was your father."
Dorothy turned her head to face him. "Oh my gosh, you really are. My mother always told me that my father had died when I was younger." Dorothy hugged her father. "But wait, what happened? Why did my mother lie?"
Javier picked up the photograph and led Dorothy to the dining room. They both sat down. "Dorothy, your mother is a psychopath," Javier said. He pointed at two boys and the girl standing in the picture. "These three were your older siblings."
Dorothy looked at her father in confusion. Mother never said anything about siblings," she said. "Your mother didn't want you to know about them. They were our triplets," said Javier. "I'll tell you everything." Dorothy nodded her head.
Javier explained that when Dorothy was younger, he and her mother, Jessica, were very poor. A few days after Dorothy's second birthday, Jessica lost her job. This job was very important to her. Javier was on a hunting trip when it happened.
Jessica was enraged when she lost her job. She went to the bar before returning home at 12 a.m. She is not in her right mind when she lost all control. Unfortunately, the triplets all went to check on her. Jessica was in the kitchen at the time.
Dorothy's mother picked up the nearest object in sight. The triplets lost their lives that night. Only Dorothy was left. "This is why I wanted to protect you," said Javier. "I would have been there for you sooner. But when I returned from my hunting trip, the house was empty."
Dorothy was shocked. She had been oblivious to all of this. She began to cry, and Javier got her some water and hugged his daughter. "Everything will be okay, Dorothy. She won't find us here," he said. Her father walked her to the living room and turned on the old television.
He began watching some of Dorothy's favorite cartoons from her childhood. Everything was now well, and she was happy. If she had stayed with her mother, her fate could have been the same as her siblings.
Dorothy grew hungry, so she got up to get a snack. She went to the kitchen. She opened the pantry and grabbed some crackers. As she was walking back to the living room, she looked out the window. Outside the window was a woman. "There you are,"